Alright, what's going on, guys? We finally reached the fourth and final arc of the Vinland series, the Vinland arc. So as of right now, this arc is still ongoing, so this will not be a comprehensive video, but it will cover the first 36 chapters, what we have available right now. And according to the mangaka, Makoto Yukimura, this is the last phase. And I would imagine, given how the last chapter ended, we probably only got about 20, maybe less chapters left before things wrap up. So it's hard to believe, but Thorfinn, Einar, Gudrid, everyone's journeys might be ending relatively soon within the next couple of years. But it's a happy ending in a lot of ways. But anyway, why don't we get started with the video? But before that, I got some hot anime merch that I want to show you guys. And if you use my link, you can get 10% off today.
Can't let you go. Can't let you go.
Thorfinn, having realized his dream of making money, has returned home. Thorfinn, says Ylva, "I'm home, big sis." And with this, Ylva attempts to punch him in the face. Fortunately for Thorfinn, his reflexes have gotten better over the years, and he dodges it. She commands him to return Gudrid to Halfdan's farm. Instead of that, though, he introduces Ylva to his new family. Though they're now rich, Einar isn't interested in that. He wants to reach Vinland so that they can build houses, farm wheat, and make a country. Gudrid agrees to come with Thorfinn to apologize to Halfdan about what happened. Thorfinn greets Halfdan, thanking him for the horns that sold for a lot of money. Gudrid apologizes for inconveniencing Halfdan. Now, since Thorfinn didn't have a wedding celebration, Halfdan will host it. A grand celebration is held as flowers rain down upon the happy couple. Later on, Gudrid tells Halfdan that Sigurd gave her freedom. Thorfinn is seen climbing on a cliff with corpses hanging onto his body. "Just give me some time," says Thorfinn. Thorfinn then wakes up, realizing he was having a nightmare. Thorfinn is always alone in his dream, but Gudrid says that she'll help pull him up. Leif then draws a map of their upcoming journey to Vinland. It will take them roughly 6 weeks to arrive. Thorfinn wants Bug Eyes to sail ahead of them and map out a route. Bug Eyes, however, doesn't have any intention of going to Vinland. Thorfinn then holds an assembly, which is called a thing. He wants to recruit people who want to escape to a new land. He has one condition, however. Weapons are not permitted on the trip. While Thorfinn's crew rests up for the night, a woman named Halfdan introduces herself. Turns out she's a slave to Halfdan and wants to escape with Thorfinn. Halfdan was born in Ireland, and her father was like a massive storm. "Well done, my wife," says the father. Upon finding out the child was a girl, he gave the mother child support and left for war.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Turns out the mother gave her the name Cordelia. Her father returned to bring Halfdan her husband, so that she could make him some grandbabies. Cordelia ran away with her mother, but lost her during a shipwreck. She then became a slave to Halfdan. Halfdan then burst through the door to claim his property back. To obtain Cordelia from Halfdan, they'll have to pay him 80 sheep. "I offer you 2 cows instead," says Thorfinn. Halfdan refuses. "Halfdan, would you like to start a farm in Vinland?" Halfdan then decides to think things over. Hild makes a new rudder for the boat. Gudrid then wonders if Hild might be falling for Thorfinn. Gudrid becomes frustrated, realizing that Hild can do most things better than her. Thorfinn then meets up with the group that wants to join them to Vinland. However, they want to bring their weapons with them. Because it's a tool only for killing, swords are not needed in Vinland. Ivar is persistent to bring his sword, but Thorfinn is not yielding an inch. Ivar states that they need balance to maintain equal trading. Thorfinn still refuses, causing Ivar to get quite angry. Thorfinn says that swords only bring death, misery, and anger. A land without swords, it's worth a try. The group leaves as Hild wonders if Thorfinn is blaming all his misdeeds on the sword. Thorfinn then buys 2 horses and 24 sheep from Halfdan. Halfdan then implores Thorfinn to buy some weapons. Halfdan then gives Thorfinn some useful advice in regards to laws and their assembly. Now, punishment is dealt with according to the decision of a trial, but a law has no power without a standing military to make the system complete. Thorfinn recognizes the importance of interdependence and regulating society so that people can benefit from each other. In fact, it's in their best interest. "A piece of trade independence," says Thorfinn. Cordelia then tells Thorfinn that Halfdan has permitted her to travel to Vinland. Thorfinn, won't you become my son? Inherit my island, says Halfdan. Halfdan has no successor, so he wants Thorfinn to be his adopted son. Thorfinn would have to stay here, but he could provide materials to Vinland as he saw fit. While Thorfinn mulls it over, Sigurd and Hat are seen approaching the mainland. They show their new baby, Null, to Sigurd's parents. Rapha? Says the child. Upon hearing this, Halfdan grants the inheritance of all his property to Null. Thorfinn attempts to talk about Halfdan's offer, but the deal is officially dead. Sigurd implores Thorfinn to go to Vinland as he believes in him. It is now springtime, and the ice has begun to melt on the western sea route. Thorfinn's crew prepares their 5 ships as Ivar's crew decides to show up, and they're following Thorfinn's rules of bringing no weapons. Unbeknownst to Gudrid, however, Ivar's crew is sneaking some weapons onto the ship. And with this, they say their farewells and depart for Vinland. Now, Leif Erikson lived on a farm in Greenland, and he was the first man to land in Vinland. Thorfinn meets up with Leif, telling him that they need to recruit more pioneers. Now, Leif has gone a bit senile, and his hearing is impaired at the moment. Bug-Eye's left for Norway, and he's been gambling with his new Norwegian girl. Leif shows Thorfinn the old smoke pipe he received from the Indians. It's been 20 years since Leif went to Vinland. Thorfinn then thinks about the last 20 years of his life. If Thors could see you right now, I can't imagine how pleased he would be. Follow your heart, my son. I will, father, says Thorfinn. In a flashback, Thorfinn chases someone down, but is unsuccessful. Thorfinn regains his consciousness as he wonders who knocked him down. Gudrid is excited to see what the West has in store for her. Thorfinn then meets Gudrid's younger brother, Otto. He wants to go to Vinland, but has a pregnant wife at home. Thorfinn says that they'll be coming back often, so he can come in the future. Some pirates bring Bug-Eyes back to call in on his debts. Thorfinn fronts Bug-Eyes the money, as Bug-Eyes says that he'll go to Vinland to build a country free of gambling debt. On their way to Vinland, Bug-Eyes says he'll make at least 40 pounds worth of gold. It's been many days since they've seen land, and they're using the stars and sun for navigation. They then spot some whales in the distance. One of the passengers worries about Jormungand, monsters of the sea. Gudrid worries that they might sail off the edge of Midgard.
For a trip to South...
No, raise the money. I got the money.
Okay, you got the money.
You want me to choke you out?
Hild suspects that the world is a sphere, because the line of the horizon curves ever so slightly. Dead ahead! Land ho! Yells Bug-Eyes. He then sees what looks like a Jormungand, and subsequently passes out. The settlers then successfully land in Vinland. Now it turns out that they're between Helluland and Markland, hence there are no trees or plains. They make their way to Markland, finding copious amounts of trees. However, this is not good enough for Einar, since he wants to build a country that will sustain the growing numbers. 13 of the people want to stay in Markland, so Thorfinn will allow them to keep a ship and supplies. And this will serve as a transfer base to the homeland. Now, upon hearing this, Hild notes that this sounds like the talk of a soldier. He's still waging a war in his heart. A war with no enemies, says Hild. Upon their travels, they discover a house built by Norsemen. This is Vinland, says Thorfinn. After celebrating for a bit, Thorfinn finds an arrow with an arrowhead made out of stone. And to avoid any conflict with the natives, they decide to travel further south. We finally reached the 180th chapter, and we arrived in Vinland, even beyond where Leif Erikson was. Thorfinn requires certain things for their new home: a bay, fresh water, a forest, and a plain. They then find a great plain with good sunlight and proper soil. Thorfinn reminds Ivar that the land belongs to no one. Thorfinn and Hild ride through the forest, as the latter enjoys the ambiance. The two hear a noise, so Thorfinn offers up some wheat, bread, and dried pork to let them know that they come in peace.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah!
Thorfinn is satisfied with how the encounter went, as we see the indigenous people inspecting the bags. Thorfinn's crew then gets busy chopping trees and building their settlement. Some of the crew is heading back to Greenland for additional supplies and people. Some of the villagers talk about how Thorfinn was a warrior as strong as Fenrir and could even take down a bear. The villagers then make a monument for their goddess, so that she can watch over the land. Turns out Einar found this in Greece, and had it fixed up to bring here to Vinland. Her name is Arnhind, and they eventually called their base Arnhind's Village. Just for reference, Thorfinn's current location is present-day Prince Edward Island. Thorfinn then discovers that they're on an island. Ivar worries about attacks from the natives, recommending that they build more ships. In fact, if they don't prioritize shipmaking, they put the entire village of 40 people at risk. It's normal for men to like war. You're the odd one out, says Ivar. Thorfinn claims that not everyone likes war. In fact, King Canute hates war. Thorfinn's crew continues clearing the forest without a day's rest. Thorfinn notices that the indigenous people are peeking at them from the trees. Meanwhile, the natives wonder why Thorfinn's group is spreading ash across the fields, and they consider the possibility that it's some sort of spell.
Oh, how magical.
Yeah, these kids are pretty special.
Back at their camp, the natives wonder how they should deal with the white people. The Pewin, which is like a shaman, says that the white people are making a field to grow crops. However, the Pewin saw the devastation firsthand once before, and so he has his reservations. Thorfinn thinks about how they'll have a wheat field by next spring. Just then, the natives start approaching. A critical first greeting. Ivar pulls out his sword as Thorfinn extends his hand in a show of good faith. Now it turns out that Pewin will perform the ritual, but Nisqua worries about his health. Carly becomes very possessive of the swing that his dad built. Meanwhile, the Nord settlers argue over how the land should be distributed. Einar wants to share the land equally, but the disagreements rage on. Cordelia thinks about a conversation she had earlier with Ivar. Ivar claimed that Thorfinn was naive on how the world really worked. The sword is necessary, and the time of its necessity will come soon. Styric advises Cordelia not to tell Thorfinn about their weapons. He also says that they're here to help him out by protecting the settlement. Thorfinn pushes Carly on the swing as he implores him to apologize to the others. The settlers then create a well. Thorfinn will test the water for a month before anyone else tries it. Polmuk and the others unknowingly start walking on the wheat. Now it turns out that Bug Eyes understands a little bit of the native language, but can't understand Nisqua. She then marvels at the ship built by the Nords. "You there, the new person! Don't touch that ship!" yells Ivar. She runs away and into Cordelia. She then begins conversing with Bug Eyes as they teach each other their respective languages. A bear is noticed at the camp, so Hild decides to track it down. She reminisces about how she became a teacher for the village, and how Carly asked her why she didn't forgive her daddy. "When the time comes, will you forgive daddy?" Hild discovers that the bear went into hibernation, so she decides to leave it be. While resting, a man with a bear mask approaches her. Now it turns out that she abstained from killing the bear because they encroached upon its land and it posed no threat to them. The man wanders off as Hild leaves the next morning. Pewin then performs a ritual to see the future. In his vision, he sees armies of men shooting guns at each other. He believes it's an intra-Norse war. He then sees meadows as far as the eye can see. The Lanu of this time trade beaver pelts for weapons. War and disease ravage the people, and it looks like the Lanu have a bleak future. An atomic bomb then goes off, terrifying Pewin beyond belief. "We must be rid of the Norse. Their destruction!" Pewin wakes up from his vision as Nisqua is pleased to see he's still alive. Now, because the disbanded Jan Vikings knew of no other life, they spent the next 2 years pirating the seas. Unfortunately, they were caught, so Canute gave the order to behead them. Thorfinn, whose ship the Vikings were after, implored Canute not to kill them. Thorfinn questioned the pirates' belief in Valhalla, proposing that the gods could be lying about the notion of Ragnarok. Thorfinn offers Vargar a choice, to go to Valhalla by Canute's hand or start a new country with him. And that's how Vargar became Thorfinn's trusted captain, who transported supplies and people from Iceland and Greenland to Vinland. Under a blue sky, an unprophesized path opens. Thorfinn is now 27, and the wheat that they planted in autumn has survived the winter, and has now become a golden crop. The village places the yield into a comb to separate the wheat from the chaff. Though most of the villagers marvel at Hild's invention, one of them says it's witchcraft.
She's the witch. Yeah, she's the witch.
I was just about to accuse her.
Meanwhile, Bug Eyes continues teaching Nisqua while Gudrid and the other women make bread. Though Thorfinn is a decent guy, Ivar still doesn't like him since he won't pick up the sword. Gudrid shows Thorfinn the bread she made. She also reveals that she has a bun in the oven. Upon gazing at the happy family, Hild realizes that it's useless in hanging on to her rage. "Thorfinn, I verified your atonement with my own eyes. Thorfinn, I forgive you." Thorfinn walks over to Hild and immediately breaks down. "You've atoned enough. My anger is quenched. You worked hard to be released from the curse of my revenge. You fought admirably. You are a true warrior." One of the villagers passes away, so Thorfinn and Einar build them a grave. Vargar returns to Thorfinn to tell them that they were attacked by several arrows when they went to Markland. Thorfinn wants to check in on the Markland people, as Ivar volunteers to go with him. After 8 days, they arrive at the settlement in Markland, but find no one inside the dwellings. Though Thorfinn doesn't think their friends are dead, they can't devote any more resources to searching them out. Ivar then approaches Thorfinn and says, "This is your fault. Because of you, we lost 13 people and 1 ship." He implores Thorfinn to buy weapons from Halfdan to avoid future problems with the natives. Thorfinn returns to Vinland to apprise the villagers of what happened in Markland. Now it turns out that the Gippi tribe that they associate with is different from the one up north, so he implores them to keep friendly relations. Mr. Ugi remains skeptical, thinking that the Lunu will attack at every opportunity. In fact, an axe went missing the other day, as they suspect that the Lunu stole it. Mr. Ugi says that they must protect their land and get some weapons. "The Norsemen are invaders," says Pjolwin. Polmok is drunk off of the Nord's alcohol, as Pjolwin yells at him for succumbing to their ways. Polmok is also wearing the Nord's clothing. He tells Pjolwin about the process of making bread, and how it provides a sustainable food source for the entire village. Chief Gippi wants to learn from the Norsemen, so as to make their lives easier. Pjolwin, however, remains resolute in driving the Norsemen from this land. Gudrid chases away some rats that were in the wheat sacks. Hild then shows what Ivar's been up to. Turns out he's been building a fort on his own accord. He tells Thorfinn they are building it to protect the ships in case of a worst case scenario. Although Gippi's tribe is not the enemy now, it's possible they might turn into the enemy in the future. Hild reminds Ivar that they are breeding mistrust, which could eventually lead to war. Styric states that mutual dependence could break down if the Lunu learn how to make bread. "I demand an emergency thing," says Styric. Cordelia then remembers the words of her father and Ivar. "Cordelia, somewhere you will find a place where you can live as yourself." Ivar begins the meeting by stressing the importance of the sword. He says they'll continue to grow their village, which means that their lands will have to expand into the native territory. The men start to side with Ivar. Gudrid reminds them of Thorfinn's words before they started the expedition. "We want to create a country without slaves or war." Cordelia then says that Ivar smuggled swords to Vinland. Thorfinn is furious to find this out. He thusly wants to turn it into a sickle blade. Styric urges everyone to stand behind the person that they agree with in this matter. Besides Thorfinn and Einar, all the men side for weapons, while the women side against it. Unfortunately, the men outnumber the women 3-1. Thorfinn wonders why they can't settle their disputes through talking, but Ivar says a strong man doesn't want to talk to a weak man. Without equal strength, you won't even make it to the negotiation table. The Lunu then arrive, as Thorfinn says that talking is the first resort. Nisqua and Bug-Eyes will serve as the interpreters. Thorfinn begins the proceedings by smoking with the natives, but he immediately starts to cough. By sharing the same tobacco, they agree not to lie to each other. Gippi heard about the situation with the people in Markland, but it was the deed of another unrelated tribe. "We wish to get along with you Norsemen." After reaching an agreement, Thorfinn tells Ivar that they don't need a fort anymore. Mr. Ugi still has his doubts, as Pjolwin walks into the conversation. "Only I know how barbaric you Norsemen are," says Pjolwin in his own language. "That's why this is the only way." Pjolwin sets his sights on Thorfinn. He gets ready for the strike as blood splatters all over the place. However, it turns out that Ivar used his sword first to cut off Pjolwin's hand. Lanu blood is spilled in Vinland. Thorfinn takes off his belt so that he can bind Pjolwin's arm. Einar wants to treat him, but Ivar says that the Lanu are treacherous. The Lanu's friendly behavior was just to lull us into a false sense of security. This is their objective. Einar wants to talk things out, yet Ivar claims that the Lanu are their enemies. "Not enemy!" screams Nisqua. She speaks about Pjwitagon, but doesn't know the Norse translation. Thorfinn urges everyone to act rationally, but the Lanu take their leave into the forest. Hilda angrily confronts Ivar. "Thorfinn said not to move, so why did you move?" Ivar claimed he saved Thorfinn's life, but Hild claims he could have dodged the attack with ease. Thorfinn claims that the Pjolwin was laughing since his expectations were fulfilled. "His intent was never to kill me, he meant to be killed." Thorfinn's group fell for Pjolwin's ruse. A world without weapons is still far away. Vinland. This wall is a fortress of mistrust. Thorfinn and his friends go to the natives' village to give gifts, but the Lanu are nowhere to be seen. Polmok and Nisqua return to talk to the group. Turns out Pjolwin was the only one who saw the Norsemen as enemies. Now, as it turns out, Pjolwin vanished into the forest without getting his wound treated, and Pjolwin feared that if the trees and the animals died, the Lanu may die as well. Hild talks to the children about the Lanu, claiming that they are not bad people. Do you know what true war is? Says a child. Hild remembers the time the Vikings came to her village and burned it down to the ground. It won't become war. I won't let it, says Hild. Those two. It's those two. In accordance with the security pledge, the group moved quickly and decisively. Nearly all the men put aside work in the fields to build the outer wall. Einar wonders what Thorfinn will do if war breaks out with the Lanu. Now Einar loves Vinland. Before this, no matter what happened, I don't want to go anywhere that wasn't here. Thorfinn wants to set up some sort of meeting with Pugin so that they can come to some sort of compromise. Thorfinn reminds Einar that too much wealth brings disaster, so they'll have to negotiate a peaceful coexistence with the Lanu. There will be no war. I won't allow it. Carly says that Hild said the same thing. Hild is going to defeat the cause of war. Ivar's group begins their reconnaissance. Ganglati then finds himself hanging from a tree after stepping into a trap. Styrik suspects that this was Hild's doing, since it bears the markings of a skilled Norse. Turns out that Styrik is well aware that the Lanu don't want to escalate tensions. The threat of war was the most effective way for you to seize power from Thorfinn's grasp. As tensions continue, people will look for the strongest to lead them. Clear now? You, replies Ivar. Styrik falls into a pit trap. He commands Ivar to run since Hild is coming to kill him. The hand that shook Thorfinn's lifts a weapon in the name of peace. Thorfinn looks for Hild as he hears something off in the distance. Styrik is stuck in a hole with downward-facing spikes, meaning the more he struggles, the more they dig in. Ivar clarifies something. I love war. Not love. Really, I admire it. But even so, I don't want to be the cause of war. Styrik apologizes for not thinking things through. An arrow flies by Ivar's head, clipping off a piece of his ear. Styrik implores Hild to come out so that they can talk. An arrow then goes into Gengu's leg. Ivar, stand up straight. Styrik recommends that he stays low so that he won't be killed. An arrow goes through Styrik's helmet. Luckily for him, it went through the gap of the top of his helmet. Ivar stands up and proceeds to berate Hild. We then see Hild hiding in the brush. She lines up her shot with her crossbow, but refrains from pulling the trigger when Thorfinn walks in. Hild, let's put an end to this. This assassination is a failure if I find out, right? Hild emerges from the brush. Take down the fort, says Hild. If they don't take it down by year's end, she'll kill Ivar's crew. Thorfinn begs for Hild not to leave, but she takes no heed to his words. She then turns her attention to finding Pugin so that she can prevent this oncoming war.